Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just Minding My Business. We're so happy that you're either here live or you're listening to the replay. But I am so excited to bring today Sally Loftis. Did I say that right, Sally?
Correct. Well done.
Right. She is the daughter of teachers, innovators, and visionaries who taught her from a young age to deeply listen to everyone in her circle of influence, starting with activism in high school. Sally volunteered and worked in spaces so that all people feel seen, heard, and represented in her work. I love that.
Oh, thank you.
Sally is the managing director of Loftis Partners, a 100% woman-owned human resource consulting firm located in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. Loftis Partners specializes in strategy, people, facilitation, and pay justice. Since launching in August of 2020, Sally and her firm have worked with 54 clients across 3 continents. She serves as a faculty member for the Center for Trauma Resilient Communities and lead consultant for 2 justice-driven consulting firms, Wayfinding Partners in Washington, D.C., and Brook Graham in London, England. She is also a certified Appreciative Inquiry Facilitator. Wow, Sally.
It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? When you
It
put it all together.
Yes, it really does, but it's all about empowering people and making people feel as though they matter. And we need you.
Oh,
We
well,
need
thank
you
you.
because there's so much stuff going on today where, I'm right, you wrong,
Mm-hmm.
it's your fault. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that solves nothing.
Mm-hmm.
We
I
all know.
agree. I agree. We need to get back to kind of our humanity and connecting with each other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, wow, I gotta ask, how did you get on this road? I gotta ask that first.
Well, I won't go back to all the way to when I was born, but I will say, just thinking about how much I do recognize, and kind of that's one of the things I wanted to bring out in my bio is that I have this long lineage of ancestors, right, that have rich stories and narratives and things that they did that contribute to who I am today, whether I know them or not, right? And also, thinking about the people who were most impactful for me when I grew up and was socialized, and those were my grandparents. And while I lived with my parents, my maternal grandparents were my primary caregivers, and they worked in the margins of the community all the time. And so
Mhm.
I grew up going with them to deliver meals, to visit the nursing home, to, a lot of it was their church, church work. And I just grew up with that being normalized and, taking in children of friends or whomever. I mean, just, kind of, it was a real tight knit community approach. And so I was socialized into that, which obviously impacted kind of how I now show up in my career and wanting to help other people.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, that's the era I grew up in, where the
Mm,
neighborhood, the community took care of each other.
mhm.
Now you lucky if you even know your neighbor's name. And it's really sad because it does truly take a village.
Doesn't it though? I have 2 teenagers and a young adult as children, and I think, boy, it takes a village to raise those children. But just in general, I mean, I think we really have lost our senses of community and connection to each other, and that is so important in how we make a difference in this world.
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, we're not here for ourselves.
That's right.
We're here to be in service. And, when you are in service, it's just a different type of feeling when you are supporting somebody, whether it's, a kind word, help with the groceries, you know, it's just little things that make the difference.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it certainly changes your perspective when you're not the center of your universe.
Absolutely.
And as I think it was Marsha P. Johnson said, our liberation is tied up together, right? I mean, like we can't achieve anything without each other.
No, we cannot. Wow. So tell us a little bit about your firm and what you guys do.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, so I started my firm in 2020, which was in the pandemic. Did not know I was going to be starting a firm in the pandemic, but it happens. And thankfully, I was already kind of comfortable with doing a lot of virtual work. And so I really kind of come into spaces typically within the human resources realm, working with organizations of all sizes, kind of primarily mostly nonprofits. And I come in and help a lot with strategy, like business strategy, and how that's connected to people, the people who work there, and kind of what the people strategy is. And then I specialize in pay equity. And that's really working with organizations around their compensation structures and addressing the many inequities that people experience within pay.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure people want to hear a lot about that because there's so many people out there that aren't getting paid what they're worth. And then when raise time come around, it seems like the evaluation is glowing, but the money doesn't match up with the glow, so to speak. So just what is pay equity? So just so everybody is clear about what that is.
Yeah. So just to kind of give a couple of definitions so everybody's kind of understanding where I'm coming from. When I talk about pay, I think about somebody's base pay. I'm not talking about their benefits or their incentives or anything like that. So that's what sometimes people call that wages, some people call it compensation, but I just use pay. And, pay equity is a little different than equal pay or pay equality. Equal or fair pay, which we hear a lot. There's a lot of equal pay days, throughout the year here in the United States that we celebrate, but that's when everybody has the same opportunities and resources. So that's typically like the baseline for employers. So, if somebody's, for instance, is an administrative assistant position, let's just use that one, is everybody being offered the same based on the same qualifications? So that kind of gets into kind of job qualifications and requirements. Whereas pay equity is really found in a system that recognizes that each employee has different resources and opportunities. So, this may be like geographic location, there may be sector market rates, there may be identity factors in there where people haven't historically gotten as many opportunities, or maybe have more lived experience in a situation than work experience. And so pay equity really starts getting into an organization's pay scales and kind of their promotion process and working there.
Wow. So on that note, how do companies really reach out to you? Because there's a lot of pay equity issues in many, many, many companies. So when does a company realize that they need help with that?
Yeah, typically it's because of employee feedback or turnover that somebody will come, they'll have employee feedback, people continually saying we're not being paid enough. And they're really trying to figure out kind of, what's happening behind those statements and really trying to listen to their employees. And, there's also situations where people have a really high rate of turnover and they need some help with trying to figure out kind of, maybe they've done exit interviews or they kind of have a hunch, that it could be related to pay. I will also say like another way is, pay equity, I'm so grateful, has become much more part of the conversation in the last 3 years. And there's, several states within the United States and cities that have started implementing pay transparency laws as well. So those are just some of the ways that people come. Another one is that people have been doing diversity, equity, inclusion work and feel like they need to do more kind of systemic intervention, and pay equity is a big one there.
Absolutely. And you talked about transparency. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, definitely. Transparency is becoming, a word that we hear a lot with pay, which is interesting because I think traditionally, at least in my experience, pay is not something people talk about very often, especially not at work, at least in front of anybody, right? Like people are talking about it, but they're not having a team meeting about it, right? With their supervisor. So there have been recently some pay transparency laws for, Colorado has done it, California just kicked in, New York City. So those are some examples, and some other ones coming along where they're requiring employers to post salary ranges in their job openings. And the reason behind that is to help with some of the pay gaps that are happening within the workforce. So it may be because of, race, gender, location, intersectional, pieces of that. And it's really to kind of promote transparency on the front end so that people understand kind of what they're applying for and don't get to that final interview and are like, getting offered something that they can't even take because they can't even afford to live off of it, right?
Right.
So that's why transparency is coming into the conversation right now.
Yeah, because I've been in that situation before. Get to an interview, and it was a struggle just to get to the interview.
Right.
Got there, and the pay was like, I ended up blowing up. I was like, first of all, you should have told me that over the phone. I had driven quite a distance,
right,
to interview for the job, and then they had this laundry list of everything they wanted me to do, and the pay was horrible. And I think I just blew up because at that point I didn't even want the job.
Well, good for you, because it's a total bait and switch, right?
Yes.
Like you get excited about this job and, then you get kind of led into this process, and then organizations wonder why people don't trust them, right? Yeah. Whenever this is, their first interaction with the organization, maybe they come into it and, there's this transition from kind of a dominant culture business perspective of, we're going to look at cost of labor and kind of look at what the cheapest we can get, right? Our workers, versus stepping back and saying, let's look at who we want to employ and what are some of the barriers they may face in coming to work for us. And let's think about how we can address that. In a barrier, I mean, like, for instance, student loan debt, or, they may be a caregiver and need a flexible schedule. So things like that.
Yes. And let's talk a little bit about the flexible schedule a little bit. Because now with the pandemic, we all know we can work from home. The cat is out the bag. For a lot of industries, people can work from home. So now that the pandemic has sort of, I guess, quote unquote, no longer as in existence the way it was, a lot of companies are wanting people to come back into the office. So how does your company support with that versatility? Because people don't want to come back in the office 5 days a week.
Absolutely. And I think if you go out and look at surveys of what people, job seekers want, flexibility and autonomy are high up there. I mean, just as much as pay. There was actually a recent study, I think it was last year in the United Kingdom, where workers were willing to take it was like a 10 to 15% pay cut to have a flexible remote job. And so, yeah, it's a huge mind shift for organizations, right? And it's not just, it's not just a business thing, right? Like we all of a sudden got plugged into our humanity because we started seeing each other's living rooms, and, we saw our kids and our pets online. And, and I do want to say, I recognize that everybody can work remote. I mean, that's definitely a privilege. Not every job is able to do that. But, yeah, I mean, it brought this level of humanity and kind of a new closeness that we didn't expect, because we were connected in those ways. And then all of a sudden, and a lot of people felt safer at home, working at home. And so all of a sudden you get pulled back into the office. And so we really try to work with organizations to have a conversation of, like, for instance, if they're, looking at bringing people back in the office, why do you need, what is it that you need? Obviously there's great things about in-person interactions and we need those, but do you need them? How often do you need them? Could it be quarterly? Or if you want to do 2 days a week, how can you prioritize the time that people are spending at the office for collaboration with each other? You don't want people coming to the office just sitting on Zoom all day.
Right.
Like that's a waste of time. And people are recognizing they saved a lot of money not going into the
Mm.
office, right? Like they had transportation, they had to pay for a parking spot, whatever. So we try to really kind of get behind kind of the resistance that an organization may be facing and saying, kind of, what are people saying? And how can I always think the best ideas come from the front line?
Yes.
They always know what's going on. So it's like, how do you prioritize what they're saying and their ideas in a way that supports the organization?
Yeah, because I mean, at the end of the day, you want happy employees because happy employees are productive and they tell other people that they're happy.
Absolutely. And they stay. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
other thing. Turnover is so high right now with organizations and all the money that's lost by just kind of churning people in and out. I mean, people will say, oh, we can't do pay equity. We can't afford it. I'm like, well, you're affording, 50% turnover.
Yeah.
So, it's obviously impacting your bottom line.
Yes, absolutely. Because if you got to keep training people, that's a lot. That's a lot. Wow. So if companies want to work with you, how do they do so?
Yeah, the best thing to do is just kind of reach out to me. I will share kind of my links with you as well, but our website is Loftis Partners. That's Loftis, partners.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm there kind of Monday through Friday, maybe secretly there on Saturdays sometimes. Don't tell my family, but I'm there posting on my account, on the Loftis Partners things, out there trying to create conversations.
Yes, yes, absolutely. This is a really, really huge thing that you're doing. And God bless you.
Thank you.
So when you're working with companies, okay, they reaching out to you. What are some of the first things that you hear when a company reaches out to you?
Yeah, typically they'll say like, we think our, pay rates are not right, or we're getting this feedback. And typically kind of my first couple of steps with them are, obviously kind of having a conversation and talking through and seeing kind of what they already have in place. Like, do they already have, for instance, salary bands in place? Do they already have, what's their employee handbook like? What's, what do they do employee engagement? I'm surprised at how many organizations I talk to that don't have any way of getting feedback from employees. That's, or maybe they do it annually, and so we talk through that. And then typically, like for pay equity, I'll start with a pay equity assessment where I kind of break down their salary bands, kind of by levels. And then we'll start looking at specific demographic information like race and ethnicity, gender, age, tenure, kind of highest paid, lowest paid ratios. And then I'll, kind of do an intersectional analysis for the people who fall into that and really kind of say, this is what I'm hearing, and then look at where their people are located, because cost of living is huge. And so many organizations are not looking at that. And so if you're not looking at your cost of living, and seeing the barriers that people have to overcome to work for you, then you're really missing the boat on who you can recruit.
Wow. It's a new day.
I hope so. I want it to be.
Yes, because now I think employees have a little bit more control now over the workplace. At one time, it was, you don't like what's going on at the company, leave. And I mean, that still holds true to a certain degree. But if you allow your employees to comfortably talk to you about what they see or what's not working for them, it makes a more harmonious workplace.
Absolutely. People are looking for places where they don't have to kind of check their identities at the door.
Right.
And I think if you can do that at work, where we spend 20, 30, 40, 80 hours, whatever your work schedule is a week, it really makes a huge difference for
Yes.
people, and are willing to stay longer and can connect to meaningful work.
Yes, and it makes a safe environment. It makes people feel safe because, most of the time, especially the salary thing, that is like a taboo. You do not talk about salary at work. And it's been like that since work.
Isn't that the truth? And what's so funny is like people are talking about it. It's like
Yes.
you don't talk about like I'll do focus groups with employees, kind of work with when I work with organizations. And, one of the questions is like, how do you know when you're being paid enough?
Mhm.
And another one will be, what conversations are you having about pay at work? And I mean, almost always it's like I have one in my performance review, annually with my supervisor. And then the other one will be like, and sometimes my coworkers or my friends and I, will talk about it. But like, they're like, this is the first time I've ever talked in a group about pay
Mm.
at work. And it's so interesting to think about that.
Yes. And I think it automatically, when a company hires you and have you talk to their employees about pay, that sends a huge message to the employee, because that says, okay, my company has decided to bring somebody in to get the pay scales right.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yeah.
must care.
As long as they implement it, yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, and it's interesting, this work ends up taking longer than you want it to, just because truly, if you're doing it collaboratively, you're working with employees to get feedback, you're having conversations, kind of strategic conversation. I mean, I call it like a linchpin, which is kind of a military term, but it's almost like a thread in a sweater. Like if you pull the right thread, the whole sweater is going to unravel. And
Right.
pay equity is one of those threads that once you start pulling on it, a lot around kind of the employee experience starts to unravel, because you start being, it connects to promotions, it connects to, obviously hiring, recruiting, it connects to employee feedback, communication, I mean, just really undoes a lot that needs to be worked on in the organization.
Yeah. And I think most, like people, we all need work. It's
Mm-hmm.
not one of those things where, you ever stop. You continuously work on your company. That you have to listen to your employees. You really do, because they really are the face of your company.
Absolutely. And I think the organizations that can kind of move with the transitions happening, like, some people are doing gig work or short-term projects. And I think, I see a lot of organizations that maybe their oldest worker is like in their maybe, mid to late 50s. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, gosh, what an incredible opportunity to do, to turn some of these employees who are wanting to work less but maintain the same pay, like into coaches or advisors, or you know, companies have got to get way more creative,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise people are going to leave the workforce and not come back. And that's unfortunate, because we have so many amazing people out there.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I mean, I did IT. I do IT, and I've been
Hmm.
in the industry for 30 something years.
Wow.
So, and it's like it's more to it than just fixing a computer. You've
Hmm.
got to learn your people. You've got to kind of flow with them in order to get the issue resolved.
Hmm.
So it's way more to it. And then, like the young people coming in, they may not have that type of insight.
Hmm.
They won't have that type of insight
Hmm.
because they don't understand. Like, I mean, I've had people that I've worked on their computers. I've had to move some things around on their desk, but it's very critical that you put it back
Right.
exactly like you found it.
Right.
And some people are anal about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, technology is a great point of just like thinking about, people talk about, oh, AI is going to, take over the workplace. Well, there are still humans that have to feed,
Yes.
the AI into that. Or there's,
Yeah.
when we use technology systems, we still have to have conversations about how we use those systems and how we work together on those systems and align and, things like that. So humanity is not leaving the
No.
workplace, and we got to figure out how to work together in a way that's meaningful for all of us.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, talking about AI,
Hmm.
one of the things that I'm pretty much really hating
Yeah.
is going to the grocery store and I gotta scan my own stuff. Bag it. I am so hating on that.
That's what my husband says. He's like, I don't work here. Like, why are
Right.
you making me? Whereas I'm like, I would much rather scan myself because I can just do it faster rather than wait in line. I'm trying to get better about that. But yeah, my husband's always like, I'm not working at this grocery store. Why can't I get a line and have somebody check
Right.
me out?
Right. Exactly. That bothers me. It depends. Like if I had one thing,
Right.
but if I got a whole cart of the groceries, I mean, I done walk down each and every aisle. I'm tired from that.
Amen. Amen. And I rarely have a small cart. 'Cause like I said, I got 3 kids and teenagers, and I'm like, I'm happy for somebody else to scan and bag
Oh,
it for a
yeah.
minute.
And then it's that human interaction, that talking. I actually saw a gentleman on Valentine's Day give the cashier roses.
Oh,
But
I love that.
you can't get that from a machine.
You can't. And like I go to a specific grocery store that's like kind of like 30 minutes from my house. I live in a real rural area, so there's not one closer than 20 minutes. But because I think their customer service is so great.
Yes.
Because whenever, I come to the check out, they always are like, what are your weekend plans? What do you think about the weather? I mean, I'm thinking you obviously get a prompt every day from your supervisor on what to ask people, but I mean, they're talking about their lives there. And I'm like, I'm so happy to be there.
Yes.
And to interact with people, even though normally I would be like, oh, okay, I'll just, I'd rather just rush in and rush out, but they interact with my kids.
Yes. It
That's
makes a
humanity.
difference. So we definitely need that human connection. They definitely need that. So again, Miss Sally, how do companies get in touch with you?
Yeah, definitely. There's kind of several ways, and I'll follow up with links for you to, but definitely on my website, loftispartners.com. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I also have a monthly newsletter on LinkedIn called Fully Human Resources, where I just kind of talk about different pieces of the human resources, employee experience and talk with other people. And I also have a special for this group, if it's okay, is that I'm offering a free hour of coaching throughout this 2023 to your listeners. So if they go to my website, loftispartners.com/podcast or not dash special, they can find the link there and more details. And it can be organization coaching, it can be personal coaching. It doesn't have to be, but I just want to give that to people to have the opportunity to kind of talk to people and learn about them and get some kind of free human centric coaching along the way.
Yeah, that's sweet of you, Miss Sally.
Well, thank
Wow.
you.
Your parents raised you well.
Oh, well, thank you. It was my whole family, and I'm so grateful for it.
Absolutely. Well, we would definitely want you to come back.
Well, thank
And
you.
talk about this because I think people need to hear it more and more and more, because you know how it is when you hear it one time, you're not going to remember every little detail.
So true.
We as adults, we're no different than our children. How many times we got to tell them something?
So true.
We're just grown up children. Well, I appreciate you definitely taking time out of your busy schedule to have this chat with me. I am honored, and it's been a pleasure. And I know my audience is going to take so much away from this. And definitely, ladies and gentlemen, go and get your free gift that Sally has offered and follow her. If you have questions, you can put it on this post. And all of her information will be there, so that way you can reach out to her directly. So thank you, my dear.
Thank you, Ida. And I just want to thank you for what you're doing with your podcast. I listened to several episodes before I came on, and I had just such rich stories and different topics. So thank you for what you're putting into the world.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.